Hoy visitamos una de las ciudades menos conocidas de Sudáfrica. Conocimos su historia, sus raíces y hasta aprendimos sobre los Khoi Khoi. Pero lo que no esperábamos era terminar en la cima de una montaña bailando y quedarnos atrapados dentro de un parque nacional en Sudáfrica. Este día fue completamente inesperado.
I always enjoy having groups from different areas because there's something else to talk about. And although Costa Rica and South Africa don't share a common history, there's influences in Costa Rica and South Africa that originate back in Europe. That is for me quite interesting because if I have to talk about Graaff-Reinet and only the Dutch, that only goes back to 1652. If I have to talk about Portugal and Spain, then the history of the Cape goes back to 1488. And if you look at what happened in the early years in the Iberian Peninsula, in 711, you had a man by the name of Tariq ibn Zayed who crossed from North Africa into the Iberian Peninsula. And I think within 7 years, they controlled the entire Iberian Peninsula. It's quite interesting because from a European history point of view, I thought these were savages from North Africa moving into civilized Europe. But when you read the history books, it actually they brought enlightenment and civilization to that area in a way, because during their occupation of the Iberian Peninsula, they boasted with the most beautiful palaces like Alhambra, which is still there, and many others. And they also brought knowledge of the sciences, and the libraries to be found on the Iberian Peninsula were the best in all of Europe. But when the Catholic monarchs of Aragon and Castile started fighting back to expel the Moors, it took on a war of religious connotation. Sheep and goat farmers, they had numerous clashes with the Portuguese. And in actual fact, the best known battle between the Khoi Khoi and the Portuguese took place in Cape Town. And that was in the year 1510. The Portuguese viceroy to India, he was returning home to retirement and recognition from the king. And they stopped in Table Bay to take on water. And while they were taking on water from a river, some of the Portuguese sailors disappeared and went and visited a Khoi Khoi village. No one knows what happened at the village. But at sunset that day, these 20 sailors arrived back at the ships, and they were bruised and beaten. They'd got into some sort of a fight with the Khoi Khoi. And this viceroy of India, the first Portuguese viceroy to India, his name was Francisco de Almeida, and they begged de Almeida to go and punish this village. So the next morning, he put together a small group, 120 soldiers, to go and teach these people a lesson. And when they got to the village was abandoned. There was no one there, except for some old men and some small children. And frustrated that they did not have anyone to fight with, they grabbed some of the children. And the moment they touched the children, all hell broke loose, because out of the surrounding bush, they were attacked by about 150 Khoi Khoi. So if you have to look at the difference between the Portuguese soldier and the Khoi Khoi soldier at that battle, it was incredible. On the one side, the Portuguese, they had beautiful cutlasses and swords, pikes, they had shining armor, they had even the crossbows. They didn't even bring the crossbows to the battle. They left them on the ships because what they were looking at, their enemy, was naked, except for something around the middle. Yeah. No shoes, no metal, just a wooden stick. After 3 or 4 hours, there was something like 60 Portuguese dead on the beach of Table Bay, because these Khoi Khoi, the Portuguese could not get close to them with the swords because they were moving rapidly and keeping their distance. And how did they kill the Portuguese? One of the oldest weapons known to man. And Francisco de Almeida, he was wearing full body armor, and he was knocked to the ground, and he had one of those sticks put through the only exposed place between the breastplate and the helmet, through his throat, and he was killed there. And from that day on, the King of Portugal expressly forbid any stopping at the Cape unless it was for emergencies.
Daba tiempo para que llegaran vivas las muestras de Europa a las Américas.
Super colonial.
That was the house of the governor. He was responsible for law and order. That was the house of the church minister. He was responsible for religion and education. They are facing each other. This one is, if you look from an architectural point of view, this one is built flat on the ground. It represents the law of the land. That one is slightly more elevated and closer to the heavens. It's made of brass. Yes, so it's written in two languages. That's Afrikaans and that's English. So National Monument, Nationale Gedenkteken. Gedenkteken. But look, our population is about 60 million. And that is because of coral-colored flowers. And if you look carefully, you might be lucky.
¿Vuelto qué?
The most valuable for us here in the Karoo, many of the farmers here are producing wool from the merino sheep. And so that is one bit of Spanish influence here. So thank you. That is very traditional. Most of the buildings in the early years were this yellow color because it was not paint. I'm sure it's the same in South America, that they used a lot of whitewash, that they used to mix and put different colors with it. So that's very authentic. Protestant church, it's one of the oldest churches still operating as a church. You can see someone's tried to steal the brass. They've broken it in half. So sadly, that's what happens. Is it for skin protection, or is it from the sun? Or?
You can use it for sun protection, and you cannot use it as like a person who hasn't done the ritual.
Yes.
You cannot.
So it's also ritual significance.
Yes, it's also ritual for the ritual, and it's used also for when you go to the bush.
Yes, for the males.
Yes, the males use it also. Yeah, and it's for sun.
Okay. So you will find, and you are Xhosa speaking.
Yes.
Amongst the Xhosa people, you find both men and women using this. Different colors sometimes.
It may be yellow.
Might be yellow or white.
Yes.
It is for skin protection, also sometimes for cultural reasons, especially amongst the men. If you see a man, very often it means he's just come back from the bush where he's been circumcised, because you're not recognized as an adult, as a man, unless you've been circumcised. So if any of you gentlemen are interested, it costs 50 rand and a bottle of brandy. Go without the
Son como unos
But I
vestiditos.
mean, things, attitudes are changing. It's not always like that. Of a gentleman's club, which was very popular in the early years. There are very few left. This one is now, I think, the second oldest, still in its original building. It was established in 1878, and it was for gentlemen only. No children, no ladies. So my father, I'm a member. That will change now, because in 1994, when South Africa got the new constitution, the policy of this club was illegal. So they had to allow ladies, or it was closed. So today we've got about 250 members, of which about 80 are ladies. And it's actually saved the club.
Neo-Gothic English architecture. Por favor.
Protestant church, it is a Dutch Reformed church. To be specific, there are a number of sister churches in the world. The one that is closest is maybe the Scottish Presbyterian Church. They are Calvinist churches. So traditionally, there's not any symbolism. But this is unusual for a Dutch Reformed church because there is symbolism, because the church is in the shape of a cross. But if you're traveling through South Africa, most of your Dutch Reformed churches, they are rectangular, not in a cross shape. So why? Well, the architect for this church, he was English, and that is why it is this neo-Gothic English style.
Me quedo aquí, dice.
A hotel, and then the accommodation for the hotel is a little street that has been restored, and this street is known for its Cape Malay influence. So I will quickly show you the Cape Malay influence on the architecture, and then we'll come back to the main building. Okay. Street. It was a public street, and they built every. So that's the female on the left,
Okay.
and the male on the right.
Parece Lions.
Fíjate la dice.
The flower is sometimes smaller than that. So it's quite rich in plant life. This peak.
Yeah.
It's called spandokop.
Spandokop.
In the Afrikaans language, kop is a head. But we also give it any peak like this or like this. We call it a kop, or if it's small, we call it a koppie. And why Spando? One of the first immigrants that lived here, he was from Spandau in Germany.
No.
So he named it after his birthplace.
This place, yeah.
He named it after the citadel of Spandau in Berlin. So I always tell my German guests, they must take a photograph of the mountain, they must go back to Berlin, they must take a photograph of the citadel, they must put it next to each other on a table, the two photographs, and they must take one bottle of cheap Cape brandy, and they must drink half of it and wait 10 minutes, and then they nearly look the same.
Me encanta la forma de esas montañas.
¿Qué amor?
Me encanta la forma de esas montañas.
Salí yo. Ahí sale la cabeza de huevo ahí. La foto. ¿Entendido? Verde. No, ya fue que.
Ah, ya.
Y bueno, nuestro querido Grosso, ya ven café, ¿verdad que nos un par de piezas más?
Miles de cosas, pero se hacen muchos pensamientos, sentimientos que los ratitos son los que vemos en la calle. Los monillos, ¿cómo se llama? Siempre toca.
Pero me dice que aquí tratando de solucionar el reto al que nos encontramos.
No hay reto.
¿Qué vamos a hacer?
No, van a venir.
Vamos a tomar barro.
No, si no vienen, yo resuelvo. Pero viene, no va a romper nada hasta que no es la autorización.
Linda.
¿Estás de acuerdo, Memo? ¿Del 1 al 10?
Un poco, yo ya lo hubiera roto.
Él quiere romper ya, pero yo sigo la ley. Tiene el bote. Sí, más.
¡El héroe lo resolvió!
¿Qué? No, hombre, yo lo abrí.
¡Hero! ¡Hero!
¡Es our hero!
Yo soplé nada más y abrí.